Do you believe that just one look, one question asked at the right moment, can make an entire bank tremble? At the Granite Trust Bank branch in Charlotte, Black customers were repeatedly denied withdrawals, scrutinized, and subjected to unreasonable delays, while others merely had to smile to receive attentive service. No one questioned it, no one spoke up. Until one woman walked in, no business card, no display of power, only a false name and a single question. Why? Who was she, and why did her presence trigger an emergency meeting at the executive board of Everstead Financial Group? Watch until the end, because the twist at minute 56 will make you question everything you just heard. Please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to update our latest videos. The 27th floor of Everstead Financial Group headquarters at 7 a.m. was always solemnly quiet. Long rows of conference tables reflected the dim white glow of LED lights, and only the printer humming in the corner dared to break the stillness. Danielle Warren, the newly appointed CEO of Everstead, was the first to enter the boardroom that morning. No staff in tow, no assistant trailing behind, just her, and a stack of documents lying alone on the printer's output tray. Normally, she would have ignored it, but the bold title at the top of the first page made her pause. Exceptional Transaction Summary, Granite Trust Bank, Charlotte Branch, last 6 months. Danielle frowned. As the newly installed CEO, less than 3 months into the role, she hadn't yet had time to fully audit the operational chain, especially not secondary branches like Granite Trust Bank. But when she turned to the second page, something immediately stood out. A column chart, clear and stark. It showed withdrawal denial rates by customer race, data that had never been officially released. The white clients column remained almost unchanged over 6 months, a consistent withdrawal success rate above 95%. But the black clients and Latino clients? Their numbers showed a steady decline, dropping below 65% in the last 2 months. No annotations, no explanation, only a faint note at the bottom of the page. Flagged under high risk, internal use only. Danielle sat down, opened her personal laptop, and logged into the internal management system, attempting to access data on the Charlotte branch. But a special security layer blocked her. The system message was clear: regional-level authorization required. She pulled out her phone and quickly messaged Marcus Shaw, her internal investigations aide. Granite Trust Bank, Charlotte. Anything unusual with transaction rates over the past 6 months? Send me all original report backups. Urgent. Less than a minute later, Marcus replied, they were marked as preliminary drafts, never uploaded to the central system. But I have archived copies, will send via internal email. Danielle rose, document in hand, and walked toward her private office. In her grasp, the once lifeless numbers now seemed to be telling a serious story of a system built to control, and it was hiding behind the polished glass walls of a small, quiet branch in Charlotte. She murmured to herself, if this were an accident, it's happened far too many times. Danielle looked out the window, where the rising sun cast its first light onto a secret about to be exposed. 4 days later, a new employee walked into the main lobby of Granite Trust Bank, Charlotte Branch, wearing a temporary badge labeled Danny Wells, Traveling Internal Auditor. No one recognized her as Danielle Warren, the Chief Executive Officer of Everstead Financial Group, the same woman who had appeared on financial news just 2 weeks prior for her speech. Rebuilding trust in banking after the crisis. Hair neatly tied back, no makeup, a plain blouse paired with dark slacks, Danielle had transformed into a modest version of herself, the kind easily overlooked in a crowd. The only thing unchanged was her gaze, sharp and observant of every detail. She was briefly introduced at the reception desk, then escorted to her temporary office, a small corner tucked behind the paperwork processing area. No one asked many questions. People assumed she was just another one of the countless internal auditors who came and went without a trace. But Danielle hadn't come to review spreadsheets. On her first day, she spent hours in the transaction zone, observing the cash handling counters. She sat in the waiting area, taking notes on every transaction, on how staff interacted with customers, their body language, tone of voice, and every delay. One glaring pattern stood out. White customers were greeted promptly and gently, rarely asked to re-verify any documentation. In contrast, customers of color, especially black individuals, were almost always asked to wait for further verification, manager approval, or system confirmation. On the second day, Danielle approached the personal records desk. She pretended to be doing a routine systems audit, but in reality she was quietly backing up rejection form templates and recording how often approvals were delayed on a case-by-case basis. During the lunch break in the employee lounge, she overheard brief but telling conversations. "That black woman from this morning came back to withdraw cash again. Yeah, you got to be careful with folks like that. You never know if the money's clean." Danielle kept her composure. She knew she was at the center of a cultural issue, something invisible in the official reports, yet clearly present in daily behavior. By the third day, she had already documented dozens of suspicious cases. Every large withdrawal by a customer of color had been flagged, an internal term for escalating a transaction to management review without any clear justification. She began to keep a close watch on two specific names: Brett Hollis, a teller whose attitude followed protocol selectively. His smile only appeared for customers he personally deemed suitable. Victor Langston, the branch manager, always polite and well-mannered, but with eyes full of control. He never issued direct orders, but every employee seemed to instinctively know what he expected. In a confidential report sent to Marcus Shaw, Danielle wrote, "I don't have formal evidence yet, but the system at Granite Trust Bank doesn't run on paperwork. It runs on unspoken rules." And all of it starts with the eyes of Victor Langston. She looked into the mirror in the restroom, adjusted her collar, then whispered, "My name is Danny Wells. I'm an auditor. I'm here to review procedures." But the truth, I'm Danielle Warren, and I'm here to dismantle every rotten procedure still standing. On her fourth morning as Danny Wells, Danielle entered the administrative zone right on time, notebook in hand, earbuds in her ears. Though the music was off, it was a tactic to make others think she wasn't listening, while in truth, she was absorbing every whispered word around her. At 8:07 a.m., the glass office door swung open. A middle-aged man stepped out with an air of authority, not flashy but unmistakable. Victor Langston, branch manager of Granite Trust Bank in Charlotte. A perfectly tailored grey suit, a dark blue tie, a silver lapel pin shaped like a hawk, symbolizing sharp vision and dominance. Every step he took was deliberate, every glance intentional. From a distance, he didn't seem villainous. On the contrary, judged by appearance alone, many would call Victor a model leader. No yelling, no table slamming. But Danielle quickly realized it was his silence that made him dangerous. In the morning staff meeting, Victor didn't give a long speech. He said only one line. "This week, customer risk indicators must be tightly controlled. I don't want to see mistakes or leniency." The room fell silent, but Danielle noticed Brett Hollis gave a subtle nod, almost instinctive. A few other employees exchanged quiet glances. After the meeting, Danielle was assigned to a data analysis desk behind the teller counters. From there, she observed Brett Hollis closely. What stood out wasn't what Brett said, but what he didn't say. When serving a white customer withdrawing $40,000, Brett completed the process in just 2 minutes. A polite greeting, ID check, signature confirmation. But when a black woman, middle-aged and clearly a healthcare worker by her uniform, tried to withdraw $15,000 from her personal account, Brett's demeanor changed instantly. "I'll need a little more verification. This is a fairly large amount," Brett said, then picked up the internal phone to call upstairs. Danielle took notes. The process took 11 minutes, involved 3 verifications, and the customer was asked to remain seated while waiting. Throughout the morning, the same subtle signs of systemic discrimination repeated. No one shouted, no one used slurs. But every look, every additional verification request, every time a transaction was rerouted into a secondary process, all pointed to the same target: customers of color, especially black customers. Around 11 a.m., Danielle quietly took her notebook to the temporary records room. There, no one disturbed her. She sat down and wrote a firm, deliberate line. "Granite Trust Bank Charlotte is operating under a set of unspoken rules, and Victor Langston is the one writing them without ever lifting a pen." As she was writing, Victor happened to walk in. He smiled. "Danny, I hear you've been working hard, observant, analytical. That's good. But remember, the most important thing here is not causing disruption. We need stability. You understand?" Danielle looked at him, masking the tension in her chest. "I understand, Mr. Langston. I'm just an auditor. I'm here to listen and take notes." Victor gently patted her shoulder. "Good, because everything here is running very smoothly." After he left, Danielle tightened her grip on the pen in her hand. She understood. Victor Langston didn't need to give orders, he just needed to look, and the entire system would know exactly what to do. That afternoon, as the Charlotte sunlight slanted through the thick glass of Granite Trust Bank, Danielle chose a seat near the entrance, where she had a clear view of both the transaction counters and the management desk. She brought no laptop, only an old notebook and a fountain pen. To anyone watching, she looked like just another internal staff member checking operational procedures. But only she knew. Every word in that notebook was living evidence. 2:13 p.m. A woman in her early 50s entered. It was Monica Ellery, dressed in a white blouse and a deep navy business skirt, hair neatly pinned, carrying a demeanor of confidence, yet tinged with caution. Danielle recognized her from that morning, the woman whose withdrawal had failed due to a verification hold. Monica approached counter 3, where Brett Hollis stood. His eyes flicked over her, not exactly unfriendly, not overtly cold, just a reluctance masked by a customer service smile. "Hello. I'm here to withdraw $3,000 from my personal account. The transaction this morning was held, and the staff said it needed further verification. I believe that should be resolved by now." Brett didn't respond immediately. He typed in her information, clicked through a few screens, then furrowed his brow, making sure Monica could see that something concerning was appearing. "Well, the system still shows a request for additional verification. It may take another 1 to 2 business days." Monica frowned. "I've already submitted all documents. I've been a client here for over 12 years. It's only $3,000, and I need it today to pay my mother's hospital bills. There's no reason I should have to wait." Brett's tone didn't change. "I'm sorry, Mom. This is a security protocol." Just then, a white man wearing a polo shirt and khakis stepped up to the next counter. No one asked him for anything beyond a standard ID. He requested to withdraw $7,000, and it took less than 2 minutes to complete. Danielle glanced at the clock, 2:17 p.m. Monica turned her head, watching that scene with a mix of heartbreak and fury. She took a deep breath. "I'm being denied because of who I am, aren't I?" Brett replied mechanically, "We don't discriminate against anyone, Mom. This is just part of our risk prevention protocol." Danielle quickly scribbled into her notebook, "Withdrawal under $5,000, flagged. Another customer withdraws over $7,000, no issue." She stood up, slowly walked behind the counter area, as if inspecting a technical device. From that angle, she could see every gesture clearly. Monica didn't back down. She requested to speak with a manager. Brett tapped the phone and called upstairs. Victor Langston came down shortly after, still wearing his practiced cordial smile. "I was told there was an issue here." Monica responded curtly, "I want to withdraw my own money. I've followed every procedure, provided everything, but your staff refuses to release it." Victor gave a slight nod. "I understand your frustration, and I apologize. However, we have internal safety indicators that must be followed. Sometimes that means delays." "It's not indicators," Monica cut in, locking eyes with him. "It's bias." Victor paused, only for a second, then regained his composure. "I think it would be best if you stepped outside for a bit while we handle the rest." "Step outside?" Monica almost laughed. "Are you telling me to leave?" Victor didn't answer, but moments later a security guard approached, hand lightly resting on the radio at his belt. Danielle bit her lip hard. If she intervened now, her cover would be blown. But she quickly activated the hidden camera inside her shirt pocket, angling it forward, capturing the faces of Victor, Brett, Monica, and the veiled remarks just exchanged. Monica eventually left the counter, not because she agreed, but because she was forced to. Before walking out through the glass doors, she turned back toward Victor. "You won't be able to block my money forever. And I won't be alone next time. I'll be back. And next time, I won't be silent." The door closed. No one inside the bank said a word. Danielle watched Victor calmly return to his office. But she noticed the tension in his jaw was now clearly visible. And she knew. The story customers weren't meant to see had just stepped into the light. The next morning, Danielle arrived at Granite Trust Bank earlier than usual. She didn't go through the main entrance like before, but circled around to the back technical wing, a quieter area where younger employees often rushed through their morning coffee before starting their shift. Near the water dispenser, Samuel Ortega sat silently stirring his cup of coffee with a distant look in his eyes. He wore a light blue shirt, his tie slightly askew, and on the table in front of him was a half-eaten sandwich box. Danielle walked up slowly, holding a paper cup, and sat down across from him. "Yesterday was tense. I saw you hesitate," she said softly. Samuel glanced at her, slightly flustered. He paused for a second before replying, "I'm just a teller, not a manager. I'm not supposed to have opinions." Danielle nodded slowly. "But you have the eyes of someone who knows they've seen something wrong." Samuel looked at her longer than before. There was something in Danny Wells' voice, the internal auditor, that made him less guarded than he was with other staff. You're new, maybe you think what happened yesterday was unusual, but it's not. He took a sip of coffee, then whispered, I've seen Monica Ellery get denied many times. Once it was because of a card error, another time they said matching data was insufficient. But I've also seen others, white customers, get processed in minutes. No extra questions. Danielle asked gently, And what did you do? Samuel gave a sad smile. I followed procedure. I did what I was told. I've never spoken up. Because I need this job. His voice trembled slightly. My dad is sick. My mum retired early. I'm the main provider. Danielle nodded, her gaze steady and without judgment. I understand. Keeping your job matters. But so does keeping your conscience. Samuel lowered his head. I don't even know where to begin. Here, people like Brett Hollis get praised for being good at identifying risk. People like me, one small misstep, and we're out. And Victor Langston. Danielle's voice dropped lower. Do you think he knows? Samuel gave a dry chuckle. Of course he knows. He's the one who suggested rewriting the transaction risk criteria. No one says it outright, but we all know exactly who it targets. The room was quiet for a moment. Danielle opened her small notebook and placed it on the table. I'm not asking you to do anything dangerous, but if you come across any documents, any internal forms, emails, or unusual directives, I hope you'll keep them. Samuel looked at her. In his eyes was a battle between fear of being dragged into something risky and a moral instinct that had never quite gone silent. If I gave you something, what would you do with it? Danielle looked up, her gaze resolute. I'll make sure this entire system is forced to look in the mirror, and I'll make sure no one is punished for speaking the truth. After a long pause, Samuel gave a slight nod. I'm not promising anything, but if you ever find a small blue USB drive in my desk drawer, keep it safe. Danielle said nothing more, but as she stood up and walked away, she knew. Some people carry two oaths, one to their job and one to their conscience. And Samuel was approaching the point where those two paths were about to collide. Late at night, in a modest hotel on College Street in downtown Charlotte, the warm yellow glow from a desk lamp reflected off the tense face of Danielle Warren. She sat still, eyes locked on her laptop screen, fingers gliding over the touchpad as she opened one file after another, just sent by Marcus Shaw from Everstead's headquarters. Document title, Transaction Control Summary Report, Granite Trust, Charlotte Branch, last 6 months. The report spanned over 80 pages, encrypted by Everstead Financial Group's internal system, inaccessible to anyone outside the senior management tier. But Danielle was the CEO. Only no one at Granite Trust Bank knew that. She began reading. Page 3, Cash Transaction Denial Rate. White customers. Denied 1.2% of total transactions. Black customers denied 3.9%. Latino customers denied 4.2%. Page 5, Average approval time for withdrawals. White customers, 3 minutes, 12 seconds on average. Customers of color, 11 minutes, 8 seconds on average. In 38% of cases, customers of color were asked for additional verification without any stated reason. Page 12, Preferred loan interest rates. White customers accounted for 79% of preferred rate loans, despite making up only 52% of qualified applications. Danielle frowned. She flipped forward to the appendix. There was a small note, nearly hidden in light gray text. Note from Branch Manager, VL. Internal criteria for R3 and R4 customer groups must be tightened to ensure credit safety and branch image. She froze. Groups R3 and R4. Her eyes quickly scanned the encrypted classification definitions. R1, high-tier clients, excellent credit history. R2, mid-tier clients. R3, clients with social profiles requiring special observation. R4, clients with risk factors outside of financials, focused on demographics. Danielle was shaken. Risk factors outside of financials, a disguised term for systemic racial profiling. She immediately placed a video call to Marcus Shaw. His face appeared on screen, curly hair tousled from working all night. "I just finished reading the part about R3 and R4, Danielle said bluntly. They're labeling clients by race and calling it risk control. Marcus nodded, his tone heavy. And what's worse is no one on the board ever reads that report. It's buried in the quarterly financial review packet, under the folder Compliance Supporting Docs. No one opens it. So it's just you and me who know, Danielle said. No, Marcus corrected. There's one more. The person who approved the report from the beginning. The one who signed off first. Danielle clenched her jaw. Douglas Vance. In that moment, the pieces began to fall into place. Victor Langston, the branch manager, was the enforcer. Brett Hollis, the teller, was the most obvious henchman. Samuel Ortega, the hesitant witness. And Douglas Vance, Everstead's senior vice president, was the architect behind it all. Danielle leaned back in her chair, took a deep breath. Marcus, I need every backup, including original email logs, last access records, and edit history. Don't send it through the shared system. Use the encrypted personal channel and keep a copy in case I disappear. Marcus looked at her, eyes filled with concern. You're walking into a war, Danielle. She smiled, weary but sharp as ever. Then it's time I stopped sitting on the sidelines. It was a damp afternoon in Charlotte. A light rain blurred the large glass panels of Granite Trust Bank, casting a glistening mist across the sleek facade. In the lobby, customers came and went in a steady stream, none paying attention to the woman in a charcoal grey blouse, hair neatly pinned up, sitting quietly in the waiting area, Danielle Warren, under the alias Danny Wells. But she wasn't there to make a transaction today. She was there to witness. From her seat, Danielle had a clear view of Brett Hollis, the discriminatory teller, standing at counter 3. He had just completed a transaction for a white man in a sharp blue suit, who walked away smiling, having withdrawn funds without needing a second ID or waiting for any verification. Then another customer approached, a middle-aged black man in a worn khaki jacket, holding his bank card. His voice was raspy. I need to withdraw $2,000 from my checking account. Brett glanced at him, and his expression shifted. The smile vanished. His voice turned cold. I need to verify your identity, driver's license, and a recent utility bill. The man paused, surprised. I've withdrawn money here many times before. New policy, sir, Brett said without looking up. If you don't have the proper documents, I'll have to deny the transaction. Across the lobby, Monica Ellery, the middle-aged woman Danielle had been observing from earlier incidents, stepped forward. She had seen it all. Her face was tense, but this time she did not stay silent. Another policy. Monica walked up and stood beside the man. I just watched you hand someone $8,000 without asking a single question. Brett raised an eyebrow and gave a dismissive smirk. You're not an employee here. Please refrain from causing a disturbance. I'm a customer, Monica shot back, and I have the right to speak up. when I see injustice happen right in front of me. The atmosphere in the lobby began to shift. A few nearby customers turned to watch. The silence spread like static, tense and impossible to ignore. Danielle quickly glanced toward the surveillance room. Victor Langston had stepped out of his office and now stood in the distance. He was watching. His gaze was cold, yet he made no move to intervene. Not yet. Danielle pulled out her phone. The camera had been rolling already. She zoomed in on Brett, recording every expression, every word exchanged. Then Monica raised her voice. "Brett, if you keep discriminating against this man, I will go live right now." She pulled out her own phone and activated the camera. A line appeared on the screen. "Live on Facebook, broadcasting. We're not leaving until this man receives his rightful money." The bank lobby fell into sudden stillness. A few staff members murmured among themselves. Brett stepped back, face reddening. At that moment, Victor approached, his voice low but sharp. "Ms. Ellery, I'm asking you to stop and leave this branch immediately. Otherwise, I'll have to call security." Monica didn't flinch. She turned the camera toward Victor. "Go ahead, call the police, and I'll call this entire city to witness how your bank treats customers of color." Danielle stood up. She calmly walked toward Monica and whispered, "I'm recording everything, don't worry." Monica paused for a moment, turning to look at Danielle, the quiet brown-haired girl she'd seen sitting silently in the lobby a few times. She gave a subtle nod. The situation stretched on for several minutes. Eventually, under the pressure of watching eyes and the looming threat of media exposure, Victor gave Brett the signal to process the transaction. The middle-aged black man received his funds. No additional documents required. Monica ended the live stream, but no one in the lobby returned to business as usual. A mask had just fallen. Danielle locked eyes with Victor as he turned to walk back to his office, and for the first time she saw something new in him: uncertainty. Not because of Monica, but because someone was watching. And he didn't know that the one watching was the CEO of the very corporation he served. Night fell over Charlotte with an air of deceptive calm. On a small street near downtown, where district offices sat quietly beside low-lit bars, a black Mercedes pulled up behind a bar called Larkin's Place. Danielle Warren had been tailing that car for 4 blocks. The man who stepped out from the driver's seat was Victor Langston, still in the same dark suit he'd worn at the bank. No name badge, no escort. Just a man walking briskly, as if hoping no one would recognize him. Danielle pressed herself deeper into the shadows of an old ATM kiosk across the street. Carefully, she adjusted the miniature camera hidden inside her coat lining. Every move now had to be documented, because even she didn't know exactly what she was about to encounter. Victor entered through the bar's back door, avoiding the main entrance entirely. Danielle waited a few seconds, then crossed the street, keeping close to the brick wall on the side. The back door was ajar. A narrow sliver of light spilled out from within, along with a familiar voice, but not Victor's. "We can't keep letting things slide like this. The reporting rates are rising. If anyone takes a closer look at the Charlotte data, we're going down with it." The voice was deep and deliberate, the tone of someone used to commanding a room with words alone. Danielle pressed her ear to the wall. Douglas Vance, Vice President of Everstead, one of the most powerful figures in East Coast finance. Victor's voice responded, quieter, more nervous. "I've followed your instructions exactly. The community risk level screening is being applied discreetly. The delayed transactions don't show up in the official reports." Douglas let out a dry chuckle. "Nothing goes unrecorded. The issue is people don't read thoroughly. But we have a new variable. Who? Victor asked. An auditor named Danny Wells. She came down from New York, overly cautious. Doesn't communicate like someone from the usual department. Seems like she's looking for something. Victor paused for a few seconds. I'll keep an eye on her. Number, you won't keep an eye. You'll make her quit, Douglas cut in. Quietly, no trace, no attention. Remember, if this gets out, you're not just losing your job, I'm losing the entire system I spent 10 years building. Danielle stepped back, heart pounding. The conversation she had just recorded was enough to blow the entire leadership of Granite Trust Bank wide open. But more importantly, it was the first concrete evidence linking racial discrimination directly to top-level directives from Everstead Financial Group's executive leadership. She retreated in silence, never taking her eyes off the bar's back door until it shut. A few minutes later, Victor re-emerged. His face was cold, expressionless. But Danielle had seen it. Behind that polished exterior was a deep layer of manipulation, cowardice, and collusion. Back at the hotel, Danielle opened her laptop, uploaded the entire recording to a private encrypted drive, then backed it up to an external device hidden inside her suitcase. Under the soft yellow glow of the desk lamp, she typed out a message to Marcus Shaw. I heard the name Douglas Vance. I need you ready. This goes beyond just the bank. 1 second later, Marcus replied, I'm checking Vance's schedule. There's something he doesn't want anyone to find out. Danielle smiled faintly. The power game had officially begun, and she, though alone, was far from powerless. The next morning, the atmosphere at the Granite Trust Bank branch in Charlotte remained as quiet and orderly as usual. Employees arrived on time, polite greetings echoed in familiar rhythms. But for Danielle Warren, today was unlike any day before. After recording the conversation between Victor Langston and Douglas Vance, she knew she had now stepped into truly dangerous territory. Danielle did her best to appear normal as she entered the office area, still dressed in her modest uniform, hair tied low and eyes observing without drawing attention. But today, something felt different. At 11:10 a.m., as she was entering routine audit reports at the second-floor desk for internal auditors, a small light brown envelope was quietly placed on her desk. There was no sender's name, only one hastily scrawled line in handwriting, If you're looking for the truth, this is something I can't hold on to anymore. Danielle glanced around. No one was watching. She immediately tucked the envelope into her jacket pocket, left her desk, and made her way to the records room on the lower floor, a place rarely visited during lunch hours. Once the door was shut, she opened the envelope. A silver USB drive, no label, no explanation. Back at the hotel, Danielle plugged the USB into her secured personal laptop. Inside was a single folder, Internal Memos, Granite 2023. She opened it. What appeared made her stop breathing. A string of internal emails from Granite Trust Bank's management office. Subject lines like Customer Tiering Guidelines, Unofficial Risk Score Reports, Hold Transactions for Tier A2 and A3. One separate file titled Langston Review Notes.x contained personal handwritten notes, where Victor Langston had written, Move Monica E to surveillance list. Latino client, require additional verification, even with credit score above 700. And finally, a video clip, a recording from a desk camera, showing Brett Hollis smirking as he tore up a loan application, muttering, These people always dream big. Not everyone is welcome here. Danielle was stunned into stillness. What she had in her hands now wasn't just data. It was living proof of systemic discrimination, sanctioned and executed by the leadership of Granite Trust Bank. She opened the window, letting the cold wind blow in to cool the anger rising inside her. Suddenly, her phone vibrated, a message from an unknown number. "I saw what you did yesterday. I can't speak up, but I can help. Don't ask who I am, but I believe in you." Danielle narrowed her eyes. Deep down, she already knew who had sent the USB: Samuel Ortega, the young bank teller, the only one who had shown hesitation, who had quietly observed, and who had never fully submitted to Victor. That evening, she messaged Marcus Shaw. "I have systemic evidence, both voice and handwriting. Get ready, we're about to bring Vance into the light." Marcus replied instantly, "I'm in New York. Send the files now. I'll loop in Ruth Levine and Jared Kim." Danielle leaned back in her chair. At last, after days spent alone in the web of power and fear, someone had reached out. No spotlight, no credit. Just because they could no longer stay silent. The next day, the sky over Charlotte hung heavy and grey. Inside the Granite Trust Bank branch, the air felt compressed. But no one knew that within minutes, the wall of silence would shatter. Danielle Warren entered the branch as Danny Wells, but her mindset was no longer the same. The data from Samuel Ortega's USB, combined with the video recording of the meeting between Victor Langston and Douglas Vance, was now enough to trigger the next phase, a public disruption. And the person who helped spark that disruption was someone no one expected: Monica Ellery. 11:02 a.m. Monica pushed through the bank's doors, face resolute. Without waiting for direction, she marched straight to the main counter and slammed her hand on the desk where Brett Hollis was stationed. "I want to withdraw $3,000 from my account, and I don't want delays or any more of your ridiculous verifications." Brett looked up. Upon seeing Monica, he smirked. "We need to verify the source of your funds, Mrs. Ellery." "Enough," Monica shouted. "I've had it with this blatant discrimination. I'm here today to show everyone how this bank treats people of color." Some customers turned their heads. The atmosphere began to shift. From a distance, Danielle quietly triggered the hidden remote audio recorder. At the same time, she live-streamed the audio feed through a private VPN line connected to Marcus Shaw, waiting on the other end in New York. Brett tensed, his voice turning sharp. "You're causing a disturbance. I'm asking you to leave the premises now. And I'm asking you to stop violating my civil rights." Brett turned to a security guard. "Call the police. She's disrupting the peace." At that moment, Monica pulled out her phone and began live-streaming on social media. "I'm Monica Ellery, a Granite Trust Bank customer for over 12 years. And this is how they're treating me because of the color of my skin. They're trying to remove me for asking for my own money." The scene spread like wildfire. In the midst of the chaos, Danielle stepped forward, still in her internal auditor disguise. "I'm Danny Wells, internal audit representative from Everstead. I strongly advise halting any enforcement actions before this bank makes a further serious mistake." Victor Langston, watching the live stream from upstairs, stormed down, furious. "Danny, you're overstepping. Leave this area immediately." But Danielle didn't budge. Her voice was steady as steel. "I'm performing my duties, and in doing so, I've documented repeated violations in how customers of color are treated. Would you like me to send the audio recording of Victor Langston and Douglas Vance directly to the press?" The room cracked open. The entire banking hall fell into stunned silence. Victor's face went pale. Brett Hollis stood frozen. Monica kept live streaming, capturing the confrontation like a real-time documentary. Danielle turned toward Samuel Ortega, who stood near the copy machine. They exchanged a brief glance. Samuel gave a small nod. He had just uploaded a copy of the internal documents through Marcus's secure network. Then a digital message flashed across the staff monitors. Emergency alert. All Granite Trust senior personnel are to halt transactions pending verification from corporate headquarters. Marcus had gone live. As for Danielle, she stood in the center of the banking hall, calmer than she'd ever been. The power games end here. From now on, no one gets silenced again. Outside the Granite Trust Bank branch, the sound of police sirens pierced the air with mounting tension. But as the officers approached the doors, they encountered a scene unlike any they'd seen before. Dozens of people holding up their phones recording, while Monica Ellery's live stream on social media had already reached hundreds of thousands of views in less than 30 minutes. Danielle stood at the center of the lobby, her gaze unwavering. Monica was still speaking into the camera. "This is how they treat us, loyal customers, just because of the color of our skin." Victor Langston stood frozen, his phone trembling slightly in his hand. One officer stepped forward, about to ask the crowd to disperse, but was cut off as a local reporter suddenly pushed through. "Excuse me, this is a public space. We have the right to film, especially when the event is being live-streamed and has drawn statewide attention." Danielle stepped beside Monica and whispered, "Can you help me hold the crowd's attention for a few more minutes?" Monica nodded without hesitation. Danielle pulled out her phone and quickly dialed Marcus Shaw. "Marcus, send everything we've got, the statistics, recordings, images, and the video of Victor meeting Douglas Vance, to Jared Kim and Ruth Levine, immediately. Tell them I need an emergency board meeting within 24 hours. Marcus replied instantly, his voice tinged with urgency. "Are you sure? Once it's out, there's no going back." "I've never been more sure." Right there in the center of the bank lobby, Danielle opened her tablet and tapped out another email. Subject: urgent situation in Charlotte. Request to convene the board. At the end of the message, she added a final line: "If we don't act, then we're complicit." The crowd inside the bank remained in chaos, but Danielle knew her path was clear. This was no longer an internal matter. This was a declaration of war. 9 a.m. the next morning, the boardroom on the 41st floor of Everstead Financial Group's headquarters in New York was completely silent, despite the hum of the sleepless city visible through the towering glass windows. One by one, the board members entered, their eyes betraying visible tension. They had seen the news. They had received the documents. And now they were waiting for answers. Danielle Warren entered last, dressed in a cool charcoal suit, holding a thick folder. No need for introductions, no need for a preamble. She placed the file on the table, then looked each person in the eye. "I'm not here to ask for permission. I'm here to present the truth." She activated the large screen behind her. The first slide showed Victor Langston and Douglas Vance in a private meeting, recorded with a hidden camera. No sound, just a dim parking lot, two men shaking hands with the caption, "Charlotte, April 14th, no official schedule." Next came the audio recording. The already quiet room dropped into a chilling stillness. "If people like her start asking questions, just cite risk control. No paperwork, no memos. We keep it clean." The unmistakable voice of Douglas Vance. Danielle said nothing else. She let the recording play to the end. When it finished, no one moved. Lillian Brooks was the first to speak, her voice low. "This is no longer a matter of suspicion." Jared Kim nodded, eyes still fixed on the screen. And it's not just one branch. Philip Granger, who had once doubted Danielle, now leaned back in his chair, weighed down by silence. He knew what they had just heard couldn't be dismissed by claiming internal protocol. Danielle opened the folder and pulled out the statistical reports Marcus had compiled. We've denied withdrawals and loan approvals for people of color at rates 3 times higher than for white clients with identical financial profiles. She walked slowly around the boardroom table, her voice unwavering. If we don't act today, then Everstead is no longer a financial institution. It is a machine that quietly, expertly reproduces injustice. The room remained still, no objections, no justifications, only the truth, and a single unspoken question hanging in the glass-paneled air. What will we do with it? Danielle took her seat. I propose a vote. No one in the boardroom voiced opposition to Danielle's proposal. Not a single word of resistance. Only eyes shifting slowly from one face to another, probing, calculating, and then accepting. The chairman of the board, a man with over 30 years in the industry, looked around the table. His voice was soft but firm. I hereby call for a formal vote of no confidence in Mr. Douglas Vance, Executive Vice President of Everstead Financial Group, for manipulating internal policy to enable systemic discrimination. For a moment the room froze, then one by one hands began to rise. Jared Kim raised his hand first, without a hint of hesitation. Lillian Brooks followed, her lips tightly pressed. Ruth Levine, who had stayed silent for years, afraid of losing her seat, was the third to raise her hand. Only Philip Granger remained. He looked directly at Danielle. The two had clashed bitterly in their early meetings, but now he spoke quietly. I used to think you were too young to understand how this industry works, but maybe that's exactly why you had the courage to do what we wouldn't. And he raised his hand too. The vote passed. Douglas Vance was removed from the executive board, effective immediately. Danielle did not smile. She hadn't come for victory. She simply nodded and moved on to the next document. I've submitted all internal data, recordings, and document copies from Granite Trust Bank to the U.S. Department of Justice. They've responded. A formal criminal investigation will begin next week. The board members sat upright, fully aware that this had now escalated far beyond Everstead. The media would pounce. Shareholders would demand answers. But there was no turning back. At last, Danielle reached into her file and pulled out a small envelope. She placed it in the center of the table. This is the resignation letter from Victor Langston, branch manager of Granite Trust Bank, Charlotte. He submitted it this morning. No one asked why. They all understood. After what had happened, there was no way Langston could remain in his position. In the silence so dense it pressed against the walls, only Danielle's voice rang out, clear and resolute. Justice cannot remain a slogan printed on the wall. As of today, it must be policy. And if that shakes this system to its core, then let it shake. 1 week after the emergency board meeting in New York, Everstead Financial Group issued a statement unlike anything in the company's 80-year history. We acknowledge that our risk control system has operated unjustly. We apologize. And as of today, everything changes. No more words crafted by the PR department. This statement was written and personally signed by Danielle Warren. In a nationally televised press conference, Danielle stepped up to the podium in Everstead's main hall. Behind her stood the company's new logo, a simple symbol of 3 interlocking circles, representing transparency, equitable access, and internal accountability. Granite Trust Bank was not an isolated incident, she said before hundreds of reporters. It was a clear manifestation of an outdated structure. But I am not here to deny the past. I am here to change it. Danielle announced a series of sweeping reforms, establishment of an internal financial equity committee to be operated by independent experts and community representatives, complete elimination of the templated internal risk flagging system to be replaced by a transparent and publicly disclosed scoring framework. All loan approvals and cash withdrawals exceeding $20,000 would now be managed through a depersonalized automated system, preventing frontline manipulation. And most importantly, Everstead became the first major financial institution to sign on to the Fair Access Initiative, a cross-sector congressional effort aimed at eliminating all discriminatory financial barriers. On social media, the hashtags #Everstead Reform and #Danielle Warren speech quickly went viral. But among all the praise and criticism, one comment from an ordinary citizen was shared the most. "I never thought I'd hear an apology from a bank CEO. But today I didn't just hear it, I saw real action." That day, the glass walls of Everstead's headquarters, once symbolic of the distance between everyday people and the financial elite, no longer just reflected sunlight. They reflected a system learning how to look itself in the mirror. 2 months after the reform was announced, Danielle Warren's office on the 48th floor of Everstead's headquarters was quieter than it had ever been. No more urgent calls, no more closed-door crisis meetings. Only the morning sunlight streaming through the glass walls, casting its glow across a desk where a folder lay open and unfinished. Danielle was preparing for a meeting with representatives from 3 other banks, all eager to learn from the newly implemented fair access reform model she had spearheaded. But then, something small near the edge of the desk caught her eye. A folded piece of paper, no postage, no letterhead. Someone had quietly left it behind. Danielle unfolded it. The handwriting, penned in black ink, was neat but faintly trembling, as if the writer had still been afraid. "You don't know who I am. I'm not a VIP client, and I don't have any voice that matters. I'm just someone who was denied a loan 3 times, even though I tried hard to build good credit. But today I received the first loan of my life. No extra questioning, no judgment, no more wait for additional review. You don't need to know my name, just know this. Because of you, I was seen. Thank you for doing the right thing, even when no one forced you to." Danielle placed the note gently back on the desk. She didn't smile broadly, she didn't cry. She simply sat in silence, looking out the window. In the distance, the city of Charlotte was waking up, a place where no one was invisible anymore when they walked into a bank. And in that moment, she was no longer the CEO of Everstead, no longer the woman standing between financial titans. She was simply a person who had made a system look itself in the mirror. Danielle Warren didn't begin this journey to become a symbol. She simply wanted a clear answer and a more transparent system for the people who had, for far too long, been made invisible in their own country. She didn't shout. She didn't slam the table. She simply walked in quietly, sat down, listened, and then began to trace the cracks in a pane of glass that once seemed unbreakable. And in the end, that glass shattered. Danielle's story isn't just about an internal reform. It's about quiet conviction, about truth documented one piece at a time, and about the cost of standing up to a system built on power, fear, and unnamed policies. And if you're still watching this, maybe somewhere inside you, there's a part that's also felt overlooked, dismissed, or pushed to the margins simply because you didn't fit the mold. Remember this: you are not invisible. You have a voice. And sometimes, when just one person dares to rise, the whole system has no choice but to listen.